So this is for offer owners or people who market for offer owners, right? So that's kind of how I position this. Like if you've got an offer, or if you are somebody who gets tasked with having to make it rain for an offer owner, this is for you. There's definitely, I'm yet to find a business that hasn't been able to implement this because nobody's closing 100%, right? If you're closing 100% and your low ticket buyers list looks exactly the same as your high ticket buyers list, you don't need this. We do this for experts, coaches, consultants, service providers. This works honestly for just about any niche or product, any service you can think of. Usually these are people who don't want to build another funnel, set up or build another webinar or a live event. They don't want to add a bunch more sales calls to their calendars, right? What's really cool about what I'm going to show you is we'll have 100 sales conversations in an hour or two during a day. Sometimes maybe two or three if it's like how deep we're going. But if you think about that, like how much time would it take you to have phone sales conversations and have 100 of them, right? Like it's so much leverage. They're meaningful conversations, and you should know that we don't farm any of this stuff out. We're not going out to VAs or anything. Like we've got people that are just normal human beings having these conversations. Like you can have these conversations with your people. And the big thing here is like the people that we tend to show this to that they love it are people who they always think they need more leads. Like, oh, I know I convert at 10%. So I know if I'm converting at 10%, if I just keep bringing in front end leads at 10%, but they're not making the most of the leads that they have. It's kind of like when this is not for like newbies, right? You got to have a list to make this work. Ideally, it's a list of low ticket buyers. And by that, I mean, they could be, a $7 ebook buyer. They could be a challenge buyer, anything like that. But they usually spend some money with you. That's not to say this won't work with just leads, because it absolutely will, like opt-ins and that sort of thing. But it just works better when they're buyers. Okay. This works really well for people who take good care of their customers. They get results, that kind of thing. All right. I work behind the scenes for these offer owners. We average about $1 million a year in sales doing this for other businesses. And it's all kinds of different niches. We got to be really good at it because we don't get paid anything to do this for other businesses up front, right? I don't get paid any sort of retainer or anything. We only get paid on a rev share for the sales that we make after our partners get paid, which means I've had to get really good at recognizing where opportunity is. And when we tap into that opportunity, figuring out what's going to make it work. So here's the general rules of engagement. You got to have an engaged audience who at least likes you. But if they love you, that's even better, right? Usually it's an email list, but it can be a Facebook group too. Anywhere there's an audience. The best leads for this are going to be those who bought a low ticket offer that leads to a need for another high ticket solution, right? And that tends to be the formula, right? We sell them a low ticket thing, they get into our world, they start to understand what we're all about. We solve some problem for them, but when we solve that problem for them, we've created a new problem with our solution. And that's what our high ticket offer tends to be for. And that's kind of how those ascension models work. Ideally, you're looking for 500 plus email opens as a general rule. Like if you've got that and you've got like a 1K offer, you can do really, really well with this and it's really worth your while. 5 to 10K is our personal sweet spot. Like that's where we tend to sell most of our offers. We get up into the 15, 18K range here and there. We've done really, really well with that, but this is our sweet spot. I've seen this work at 50 and 60K. And remember, all of this has been done through email and a Google Doc. That's it, right? So there's no phone calls. We're not getting them on the phone. We're not trying to put them into a room. Like it's nothing like that. So here's what most offer owners do, in my experience. They tend to do, and the reason why we tend to get such a large volume of business from this is they build their funnels and then they run their ads and they get their low ticket customers and they try to ascend them into their high ticket offer, right? Usually it's through a webinar or a live event or a sales call that we, kind of camouflage as a strategy session. And here's the thing. Some of those people are going to buy, but most of them don't. And this is where so many business owners are leaving so much money on the table. What happens to those non-buyers? What usually happens is they get put into this brief follow-up sequence, or they get put into like a general nurture email campaign, right? Or what is shocking to me, how much it happens, is they just get completely ignored. And when I tell you that, like, this happens so much more often than you might think. I mean, you might do this too, and you might be guilty of it. But like, I think a lot of people have this perception, like, oh, these like super big cats, like they have these super robust like follow up systems, and they're just like, it's all just so dialed in. When really, like, even they get to a certain point with their non-buyers, they don't know what to do with them. And so that's where, we come in and we see the opportunity, and where we've really made some differences and just changed the math entirely in businesses. I never go into businesses that need me, right? Like, I am not a savior of businesses more. I'm looking for places where I can leverage this like very unique tactic with the resources and the assets that they have, and have a big windfall that changes the math in their business, right? Like, that's the whole idea. What we do to make that work is, instead of focusing on the logical side of an offer or the logical side of why somebody would buy an offer, we focus on the emotional side. And I know that sounds like stupid simple, like, yeah, no duh. But it's amazing how much this gets like ignored, or how like shallow people go with it. I'm worried about, and I'm concerned with, and focus on the outcome and the emotional triggers that cause a person to buy or not buy an offer, right? Like, that's the big thing. Like, I don't sell product. I don't sell a guru. I don't sell any of those things. I sell the emotional triggers that cause a person to buy or not buy an offer. What's been really cool in the last couple of years, like at least in like the internet marketing space, is there's been a lot more talk about selling the outcome, right? Which is really cool. Understanding the emotional triggers and the feelings that leads connect to outcomes is where magic happens. Because when people buy our offers, they are buying outcomes. Even if you're in like the make money space, there is an emotional reason they want that money. It's tied to that outcome. There's an emotional thing there. There's a feeling, and tapping into that and having a one-on-one conversation with somebody about that can be really, really effective. The idea is, if we think about it, like, you got to be the thing to get the feeling. And what I mean by that, like, for example, is like, you got to be a really great cook if you want to feel like love and praise from your family for making this great meal, right? So that's what that means. Like, that's the outcome. People want the outcome of getting this, praise and love for their family. So yeah, they need to be the great cook to get that. So that's the outcome. Like, that's what they're buying. Oh, I'm gonna learn how to be a great cook. But really, really what I'm buying here is I want to feel this praise from my family, right? And those emotions and feelings tend to be tied to status, security, providership, certainty, leadership, shame, and like removing that shame. We see that a lot in the weight loss space. Getting praised, things like that. So let's talk about some examples of this. Somebody isn't buying a weight loss program to buy a weight loss program, right? Like, yeah, they want to lose weight, but like, why? What's driving them to lose weight? Because they didn't get overweight yesterday, right? So there's an emotional trigger that drives them. Like, I'm all about finding that emotional trigger that is driving a behavior, that is leading someone to wanting an outcome. So, for one person, like, we could be selling the same offer, and different people are buying for different reasons. And that's what's so cool about this method, is we get to hit them one-on-one with our conversation, versus a webinar. Like, you can only talk to so many audiences in a meaningful way, because it's like like, you're here and that's the thing. Or a VSL, it's just recorded, and that's the shot you get. Or even on sales calls, people tend to like operate from scripts, but when you're having one-on-one conversations with people, you can find out like what it is behind the reason why they want this weight loss offer, for example. So, for one person, they might have a high school reunion coming up in 6 months, and they want to walk into that event and just have people who used to make fun of them tell them, "Oh my God, you look incredible. I hardly recognize you." But for another, it could be somebody who just had their first grandkid, or they're about to have a grandkid, and they don't want to sit on the sidelines and miss out on making memories because they were unable to play with their kid. These are real world examples I've taken from our own campaigns. For the exact same offer, being able to have that one-on-one conversation with them and get to that, all of a sudden, we're not selling a weight loss program anymore. We're selling this feeling, this emotion of like looking forward to that high school reunion and what everyone's going to think, and having that idea experience of, oh my God, like you look amazing, right? Like that's what we're selling. And it becomes so much easier to sell to that particular person who in the first place said no. They went through the sales process, they went through the webinar or the sales call, and they didn't buy. We're finding a way to talk to them in a more meaningful way. I'm a big proponent of leading with empathy and wanting to help determine if our offer is a genuine fit to solve the problem that people have, rather than trying to sell everyone who will have us. And that's a big switch for a lot of people. And when you operate from that idea of like, all right, what I'm selling is of service and I'm selling is service, and you change that frame and that dynamic, people can sense that empathy, and it makes you a better salesperson because you're truly trying to see if you can help them, not just see if you can sell them. So, like I said, we're having these one-on-one combos with people, and we're able to have these one-on-one conversations that, qualify and position our offers uniquely for these people. We're trying to qualify them, like I said, and see if they're a good fit for this. But here's the thing. Here's where this gets really cool. Instead of guessing or assuming what the emotional triggers are that our leads have, which a lot of people will do, right? We let these one-on-one convos guide everything, guide all of our hand raiser emails, and begin this pre-selling process, which I know sounds like a no-duh sort of thing. Like, well, yeah, of course you would do that. But so many people get so far down the track with their videos, their ads, their webinars, their call scripts, before they've had these conversations, before they found out from people specifically why they're buying or interested in this offer in the first place. And those emotional triggers that come out in those conversations, those are what fuel our follow-up emails to get additional hand raisers, right? Like it's a very dynamic process. And, I've got one email that I always use to get that conversation going with people. By the time our leads hit our inboxes for the first time, like we put basically our process, like we'll send a hand raiser email out, hey, we're doing this thing. And they come in, like we've already partially pre-sold them because we've started to appeal to those emotional triggers in that initial email. And the only reason we've been able to do that and do that effectively is because we've had these conversations with our leads. And then what happens is we just pick up those one-on-one combos, and we get to zero in on the exact emotional triggers that cause them to reach out. Like that specific person, the person that wants to look great in the dress at the high school reunion, that person that's having the grandkid, the person that is, has to sleep with a CPAP machine and is like, stopped breathing multiple times in a night because they're so overweight and they're scared to death that they're going to die. Those are the same offer, but three highly different emotional triggers to cause them to reach out. What ends up happening is those leads that said, hey, no thanks, all of a sudden they turn into 2K, 7K, 10K sales. And here's where it's interesting for you as an offer owner. You already have your program built. Your offer infrastructure is already built. So odds are you've got capacity if you're doing a one-to-many situation. You're already paying your coaches to show up. The calls are already happening. You're paying for your Kajabi and like whatever SaaS and tech stack and all this stuff. Like it's all part of your top line expenses. So every single person that you can put in after that is bottom line revenue for you. And that's the thing. There's so much bottom line revenue that you can add just by sending out a few emails and having a Google Doc. And here's what's really cool. You get to do the whole ding dang thing over and over again, multiple times a year, because you keep bringing in new customers to your front end, right? But what's really cool about this is when you're bringing in more revenue and it's bottom line revenue, you can fuel that front end machine, that flywheel even more and make it stronger and bigger and better and bring in more and more people into the front end. So yeah, you're closing more people with your typical sales process, your call, your webinar, whatever, your live event, but you've also got more people for this other line in the water with these emails and this Google Doc. Oh, the other thing too is like the people that you might have talked to on those phone calls, those live events, those webinars, whatever, all of our lives change, right? Situations change, our desires change, our focus changes, whatever. It's not that they couldn't use our product anymore. It's that it's just out of sight, out of mind. But when we come back to them and we can appeal to that, the emotions that are maybe appeal to the emotions behind the situation or their lives or their desires with our copy, we've got them back in the conversation. And you've already spent all this time and money building this relationship with them, right? Like they've got your front end offer. They've had conversations with you. They've seen your content and everything. And now you're writing to them in a very deep way that is simple to do, but resonates with them. Here's my process. I send a hand raiser email, and that hand raiser email is written to a very specific audience. I'm not trying to speak to everyone with one email. There's way too many people. Like if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody, right? I'm much more of the mindset that, oh, we can send multiple emails. So why don't we just start with one slice of our audience and speak to them about the desirable outcome that those people might be after. Tell them the things that we're not going to do that they don't like. Invite them to get details. Like that's my first email. That's what that hand raiser email is basically comprised of, right? Those people get that email and then they respond to an inbox that I man. And some people will have these conversations through chat, like Facebook chat or whatever, or even SMS, like text. I'm trying to figure out, like, does our offer make sense for those people? Like, is it truly going to help them get the outcome that they're after? What outcome are they after and why, right? It's not about losing weight. So tell me, why do you want to lose weight? Got a high school reunion coming up. Well, why is that important to you? Why did you need to lose weight for that? Well, in high school, I was like always overweight. I was known as being overweight. Like I want to go in there and I want to wow those people. I want them to like wonder who I am, like they've never seen me before. All of a sudden, we're not selling a weight loss product anymore, right? And if my product can get them that result, then I offer them that pitch, and it's through a Google Doc. And that Google Doc is such a leverageable asset, right? I make it once, and I can use it over and over and over again, or I can slightly tweak it for different avatars of people. Or as I'm having these one-on-one conversations with people and I'm finding out what's driving them and what's important to them or whatever, I can tweak that Google Doc, right? It's a living, breathing document. There's no rule that says I can't go back in there and like add something to it or remove something or whatever. And then literally people will come back to me and say, oh, I'm in, I'm out, or I got a question. And when they're in, all we do is send them to a checkout page, and it's the most bare bones checkout page you could imagine. Literally the name of the program, credit card details, checkout. That simple. So this is the process. Email, qualify, Google Doc, checkout. That's the whole deal. Okay. We really focus on what it is people are buying because they're not buying the program. Nobody gives two snakes about our program or our deliverables. It's all about the outcome, and it's about the emotional attachment or the emotional, I guess you could say the emotionally attached to that outcome. So this business coaching one was interesting. Like these were 12,000 buyers and they had bought a $27 low ticket offer. This person was all about low ticket offers. And so they built a really good sized list. They had sold 5 spots of this program to their audience. They marketed it themselves to that list. They sold 5 of them. We came in, we found the emotional triggers. We set up our campaign and we added 30 people in 4 months. They sold 5 in a year. We sold 30 in 4 months to the same people that said no. This is a $15K offer, guys. $15K paying for, they could do 4 payments of $4,500. So it's like, it wasn't cheap, but we made the cost of not having it more expensive than that buying in price. And the emotional triggers on that were security and status, providership, and leadership. That's what we were selling. So that product, that offer, like I said, we sold it for just a handful of months, not very long. And in the first month, we did 187 grand. We ended up doing almost 450 grand for this one in 4 months. 2 people who said no, okay? Because we tapped into those emotional triggers, and that's what we sold. That's the big takeaway from all this. So this was for a AI copywriting coaching group. It's a one-to-many offer. And this one was a little different in that these weren't necessarily buyers. We mostly sold this to webinar attendees. They went on a webinar. It was a killer webinar, killer offer. A bunch of people bought it. But like anything, there was a list of people who did, right? What did we do? We added 30 people after the webinar was over to this program. It was $5,800 for a pay in full, or $600 a month for 12 months, $7,200. So every single month, that MRR is $600 ahead. These folks, like, because it's AI, right? Like AI is everywhere. There's so much competition for AI. Like I don't know that I can go 3 Facebook posts without seeing somebody talking about AI. But the emotional triggers for those people, like we weren't just selling AI, that was part of it, but like status and being a pioneer. We spoke to the fact, like, imagine if you bought Bitcoin right when it came out, or you had invested in Amazon, right? Like those are pioneer people, and those people have the story, right? So imagine if you could learn how to use AI to do copywriting, become a copywriter from one of the world's like $3 billion copywriters. That worked out really well. We did, I want to say 130, yeah, about 135 grand in extra sales after that webinar, just through our efforts. Remember I told you earlier that we're creating assets, right? Those Google Docs, those emails, those are assets. Well, that weight loss offer that I told you about earlier that did like the 400 or 200 grand or something like that. Those guys had to close that offer down after a certain amount of time, capacity thing or something. But they came back to us about a month ago and said, hey, we're open for business again. Can we do this again? We got this list. Let's go. Let's see what we can do. I took the Google Doc we'd already had, an email, a hand raiser email that we already had. I literally just dusted them off, changed a couple words, maybe 10, 20 minutes worth of time, and we just relaunched it. In the last 2 weeks, that same exact offer has done 60K. But here's the interesting thing. We raised the price point. Remember I told you guys it was $2,400 when they sold it at first, and then we bumped it to 5K. Well, now it's 7K. And now every monthly membership that used to pay $500 is paying $650. This isn't so much like a flex about making 60 grand in 2 weeks. Like that's cool and everybody's happy. You know, it's the same emotional triggers because it's the same offer and it's the same audience. And like this guy brings in a very specific group of clientele, dust it off, you launch it, and then in the next 2 weeks you got 60 grand coming in. That, like from people who told you no in the first place. Like that changes our businesses, right? So like that's why I'm super bullish on this, just because I've seen what it can do for businesses that are already doing well. So usually our offer owners, when they first take their crack at them, they are selling them through phone calls or a webinar, live event, PSL, that kind of thing, right? When we sell to them, everything is done through an email. Everything. We send them an email, they reply, we have this conversation back and forth through email, qualifying them, figuring out what it is they're really buying, what their emotional triggers are, helping them connect those emotional triggers to the outcome that our offer provides. And then we give them the pitch through that Google Doc. And it's like, are you in? Are you out? You got a question? It's not, hey, I'm curious how you attribute sales for RevShare. I have custom affiliate links that I send everybody to, right? So everything gets tracked to me, and I've got Zap notifications that tell me exactly how much is happening and when and who bought and everything. Everybody's incentivized to do their best and keep everybody happy. When you're making people money like this, like I can't tell you how many times I've done this for businesses, and then they come to me and be like, what's next? What else can we do? What do you want to do now? I look at these as partnerships, right? I look at them as long-term investments into, I don't want to just build this once and have a windfall. Like that's great and walk away. Like I want to build long-term things because once I have the stuff built, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's the golden goose. There's nothing this won't work for. I've seen this work for solar. I know people who've sold old cars this way, HVAC, plastic surgery things. I focus personally on, when I'm doing this, I focus on businesses that have like high margin info products, usually, or coaching products, right? Things where there's a lot of margin where it makes sense for them to cut me in at 30, 40, 50%, depending on the deal, because they've got the margin to do that. If you are interested, what I'm doing, our aim is to turn them into a payday of 25K, 50K, 100K, even if buyers have said no to them in the past. We're not going to use phone calls or webinars. You're not going to spend another dime on ads. We're just going to push send on 5 emails, and then we're going to use Facebook or email to roll those folks into your 1K, 30K programs. If you're interested in that, shoot me a DM, shoot me an email. Your best prospects are always going to be your low ticket buyers or your mid ticket buyers, right? Like if you're getting 500 opens per email and you've got like $1,000 product or more, reach out to me, Facebook, email,